Yeah, as soon as I can
Everyone, to tonight's Infrastructure Planning and Environment Committee meeting for Monday, the 11th of May, 2026. Thank you for your attendance. I'm declaring the meeting open at 6 o'clock. We'll start with the opening affirmation acknowledgement of country. You could stand, please. Councillor King.
We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all.
Thank you. Acknowledgement of country, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, traditions and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community.
Thank you. IP2, recording and live streaming of meeting. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed in accordance with the Council's Code of Meeting Practice and will be made publicly available on Albury's website. Attendance of this meeting is taken as consent to being recorded and included in the live stream. Any person who does not consent to being recorded may choose to leave the meeting. Members of the public are reminded to refrain from making defamatory remarks or disclosing personal information, noting that Albury City is not responsible for comments made by individuals. Recordings and live streams are protected by copyright and remain the property of Albury City. No part of the meeting may be copied, recorded, reproduced or transmitted without the prior written consent of the Chief Executive Officer. Conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair. Mr. McGrath.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do have one. It's from Councillor Callaghan, declaring a non-pecuniary, less than significant conflict. The reason given is that a family member has contributed to have your say on the matter in the business paper. It's in respect of presentation IPE 9.1, the Draft Heritage Strategy Review Workshop. Councillor Callaghan has indicated her intention to stay in the chamber.
Thank you. There is no advice to the meeting regarding planning information. Apologies, IP4. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation that the committee receive, note and accept the apologies of Councillor Bullivant, Councillor Hudson and grant them leave of absence for the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor King.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The recommendation is carried. Attendance by council at meeting by audio-visual link. There are none. There is no Merrill minute. We have the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting, IPE 6, held on the 13th of April 2026. Councillor King.
I move that the minutes of the Infrastructure Planning and Environment Committee meeting held on the 13th of April 2026 at 6:32 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor King, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thanks.
Question, Councillor Callaghan?
No.
No? Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? It's carried. Thank you. IP7, there are no questions with or without notice. IP8, there are no notice of motion or notice of rescission. We will now move into the workshop presentation deputations, and I'd probably ask that a councillor move us into a committee of the whole to enable questions and clarifications of the items. Councillor King.
I'd like to move that we go into committee of the whole.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I'd like to second that.
Thank you. Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. So now we'll switch over to the presentation for the Draft Heritage Strategy Review, and our presenter will be Mr. Christie. Thank you, David.
Thank you for the opportunity to present, councillors. Obviously, this follows on from the consideration of the report at the IP&E committee early this year, where we requested a little bit more background and consideration of how the heritage review came about, some of the historical components to it, but then also some commentary on the points that were raised in the public forum component of when you're considering that report. And then obviously from this, then we'll come back to councillors at a later meeting with a further report for your consideration. So as I said before, this is to look at the heritage review. This will allow us that next tranche of work to occur on our heritage around Albury City. There are some components to it, and probably the key to recommend, there's probably two main components consider as part of this review. One was the heritage strategy document itself, which was this attachment here to your reports, which was the consideration of some of the key themes for heritage around Albury that influence Albury's development, and also made some recommendations, some broad recommendations around how council will go and review and recommend ways to identify and recognise those key heritage areas and themes around the development of Albury. And then the other component was also around consideration of the existing items of heritage listed within the LEP and whether the community wanted some additional items listed or some items taken off. So I'll talk through that, but that was the key two components, and they can be separated for council's consideration. So in 2021, late 2021, there was an approval for a stakeholder engagement plan and a project to go ahead for the review, which also created a community heritage working group. And I've got an additional slide later on that talks about that community heritage working group, its membership and its form and function and purpose. And we also went out to our community during 2022 through Have Your Say and asked for our community to make recommendations about items they may wish to see included in our heritage register and our heritage consideration as part of this. Some of those items they list I'll get onto later were already included, and some items were new items for consideration. Overall, we received those 41 nominations that came from either the community or from the Community Heritage Group or the Heritage Consultant who was appointed to assist with the writing of the Heritage Review. And so the Community Heritage Group considered those 41 nominations and made some recommendations for ways forward to accept or not go ahead with the community recommendations. Some of those nominations still were coming in during consideration from the meeting of that group in 2023. During 2024, we did put the group had already finished. We did put the work a little bit on hiatus as we concentrated on the Fagoona-Willinga Precinct Structure Plan and a couple other key projects. So it was around a 12-month period. It wasn't a substantial amount of work done for this. And then in July 2025, we came back to council and sought permission to go and exhibit those documents. And then obviously from that exhibition process, then we came to you and reported to you at the last IPNE around what were some of the recommendations to go forward. So again, just a little bit of a snapshot of the journey through to this point in time. So a community heritage working group, the backgrounds, there's state government guidelines about how they work. It's an advisory group. They're generally guided by an external heritage advisor. In this case, it was the appointed heritage advisor for council for this project. Staff members were involved in that group as chair and as non-voting members, so to speak, in essence, provide advice to the heritage working group around where they should, what they were considering, and what might have been the implications in that respect. Two councillors were nominated on that working group, which at that stage was Councillor David Furley and Councillor Steve Bowen. And so they also provided input into that from a councillor perspective, but there are 4 or 5 community members as well, and won't go into those, but they're outlined in the report when you get the report. So the overall heritage review, again, that first document that I lifted up, it looks at Albury's thematic history and updates the thematic history for Albury. It recommends some local heritage listings from this process, recommending some enhancements to our statements of heritage significance around heritage items, provide some more guidance, and also came up, as I said, with that revised heritage strategy. So a number of those key changes that were come through, and I'll go through those into a couple of more slides. There were 15 recommendations for adding to local heritage listings to a heritage register, including 1 new conservation area. There was updates to 7 existing heritage listings. There were 16 items that were looked at being removed from the heritage register for a variety of reasons, including that the buildings were no longer in existence. To partially delist 6 items, so there might be some clarification around whether it was the entirety of site or just a portion of the site that was included in the heritage listing. to look at revising the statements of significance for the heritage conservation areas, the 13 heritage conservation areas within Albury City, which also included some minor boundary adjustments to those conservation areas where recommended. And there were some broad administrative updates as well. So this was the 15 heritage properties listed for heritage nomination that weren't recognised in our existing schedule for the Albury 2010 LEP. So again, won't go through these individually in full detail, but there is information on each of these items attached with the council report that you considered, and also will be attached in the future council report. A couple of these items obviously were the subject to some particular submissions to council, and then I'll talk through a couple of those particular items by themselves. There were 16 items that were also recommended for delisting or removal from them. And as I said, a number of those could very well be that they're no longer in existence, such as the Bungie Flour Mill site is no longer in existence, or that the heritage fabric was no longer there that originally talked about its listing. So there was an old shop at the corner of Hume Street and Olive Street that was listed purely for the sign that was on the side of the building, but that sign's no longer in existence. So it's no longer considered that that building retained the rationale for why it was listed previously. So there are just some examples of why items were taken off. Those some also, such as the car club, are in such dilapidated state, they're not capable of being rectified and brought back up to standard. So recognising that they no longer can serve the heritage function into the future, even if they are technically still on site. Just a summary overall, the public exhibition component. So this is post that July 2025 meeting. So we launched the Have Your Say in August. There are over 1,500 property owners and nominated places of future properties that were individually notified in the heritage conservation areas and the owners of those properties, as well as obviously broadly within the community through a variety of methods. Overall, we received 99 submissions. A number of those were themed around some key components, such as the Holy Spirit Church had approximately 50 odd submissions, etc. And then a number of them were individual submissions. Pardon me. The top issues overall were just in there, whether the site should be heritage listed at all that was being nominated, some of the financial implications and property value implications of listing, whether there'll be any unreasonable restrictions on development as a proposal of being listed, as a result of being listed, what it might mean for maintenance and repair costs and how that may be increased or not due to heritage listing. And then there were some people who said, well, it's my property, it shouldn't be listed, whether it's important or not. So that was the general themes that came through in the submission. Again, in your report, the purpose of tonight wasn't to prosecute each of those in detail, but those were prosecuted within in the report and the attachments within the report that you'll consider. Overall, a number of the submissions did provide general support for the heritage review and the strategy and what they're talking about, but may have raised concerns about the individual property that they were interested in. They did inform a number of our recommendations. Obviously, didn't necessarily agree with all the submissions and make changes accordingly, but they were considered by staff in our recommendation back to council, and there's some rationale as to whether they were supported or not. And I believe it was attachment 10 that had a copy of the submissions and the staff rationale as to whether there were any changes as a result. As I said, a number of those 99 submissions were themed over a couple of items, especially around the Holy Spirit Church and also around St John's Hill Estate, accounting for pretty much almost 2/3 of the submissions, and then a number of other submissions past that point. Also noting there were 9 submissions that sought Eastern Hill to be included. At the start of this process, as I said, we'd gone through that community consultation components around trying to get recommendations from the public. And when we were notifying this, was clear around that we weren't going to consider any new items. It's not to say they won't be considered into the future in other reviews, but it was around the items that had been considered as part of this review. The items that were for new were done in that process during 2022 and 2023 when the Community Heritage Working Group was considering new items. So there were a number of speakers that did speak at the public forum, and I'll just quickly speak to just a couple of those, just provide some more context for councils around a couple of those items. The MDA raised concerns around the listing of Hume Dam and what it may mean in terms of an impact for the operations of the Hume Dam, for maintenance of the Hume Dam, and what impacts there may be into the future. Just for some clarification around a few key points. One, the Hume Dam and a number of the surrounds around the Hume Dam are listed under what's called Section 170 register, which is under the Heritage Act. That's where government agencies recognise heritage items that they manage and the like, and they've recognised the heritage value of those items. So they already have heritage considerations they need to consider around some of those components. There were some concerns raised around whether it was appropriate to list dams or the like for heritage value, and what that may mean impact again on their value. With consideration to the State Heritage Register, there are a number of other significant dams that are locally listed. They include Avon Dam, Blowering Dam, Burrinjuck Dam, Cataract, Cordo Dam, Lake Yukonbean, Lake Jindabyne, Nepean Dam, Prospect Reservoir and Warragamba Dam. Now, a number of those dams are included in the Snowy Mountain Scheme, but also included in Sydney's water supply, and they've been able to be maintained and have and be able to function as they need to function without any impingement of as a result of their heritage listing. So that was just around whether it impinges on that. State Environmental Planning Policy, Transport and Infrastructure 2021 also has a clear clause, which is 2A. Development for the purposes of the maintenance or replacement of existing water storage facilities, and a dam's a water storage facility in planning terminology, may be carried out by or on behalf of a public authority without consent on any land. So heritage listing of the Hume Dam would not drag them into a DA where they would not require a DA. It would not slow down the process. What it asked them to do is have some consideration and undertake the work sensitively. There was an example that they gave about whether they need to pull out each gate individually out of the 27 gates and the like. It's more about if you're going to need to replace the gates, if you're going to need to paint them or the like, give some consideration. Don't do anything outlandish. For facetious sake, don't paint them pink if they're meant to be white, but it's not saying you can't paint them. So it's clear around that. And the Border Mail also in the article, I don't know if I need to read it, but I've got it here, also had Water New South Wales saying that the listing of Burrinjuck Dam had not required them to liaise with Yascal Valley Council on any of their maintenance issues on the dam. So that was just some facts and information around whether this is creating an additional burden for the dam. Now, whether council considers that the Hume Dam should be listed or not, and whether it represents the themes, and it is one of the key themes in here, and everyone does talk about the Hume Dam, and off Water New South Wales's website on the Hume Dam, it also talks around the fact that the Hume Dam was one of the largest dams in the Southern Hemisphere and had a substantial impact on Australia and Australia's growth when it was built in that interwar period. So from a heritage perspective, we would recommend that those things suggested should be considered for listing. But obviously that goes into council's information for that consideration. But just that clarification around the heritage listing would not create any additional administrative burden for Water New South Wales to undertake works on the dam that they currently have to consider under the Section 170. But what it does do is reflect within our heritage strategy a key component of the development of Albury, and then accordingly listing items that are related to that development. Charles Sturt University raised some concerns, obviously, around some of the proposed listings through from there. They did support the removal of listings of some building ruins. They raised some concerns around whether the rammed earth buildings, which were built around the turn of the century, whether that listing could be shrunk to more just include the buildings, because at the moment that listing does include pretty much the semicircular space in which those buildings are located. So that was some of the concerns. There was also the forestry building and the Sir John Isles building, and around whether those were of suitable capacity to be listed in regards to the condition of the forestry building and whether it still retained its character and was in suitable condition. And then in regards to the old corporation building, that internal changes had meant that it didn't retain enough of its internal fabric, but they had no objection to the exterior of the building being listed to recognise its design and its presentation, etc. There was some response to those, obviously, as I said, in that attachment 10, which is a little bit through up here, just summarised up here. But I guess the key thing again was going back to what I said right at the start, that what's before council was to adopt the review. What was then considered as well was whether we made any changes to our local environmental plan by either adding items, removing items and the like. And that requires a separate planning proposal from council to get a gateway determination and go out for formal exhibition. But what we decided to do as part of this and as part of the work of the Community Heritage Group was provide that information so we could get some initial feedback. So even if council does decide to pursue those down the track, then obviously there's still an opportunity for landholders to make formal submissions again and have that item re-prosecuted.
Councillor Callaghan, question?
Thank you so far for the presentation. I'm not sure if I've read the presentation, so I don't think you're getting to it, but so is it possible to separate when it comes to council, the strategy and the items and deal with the items through our LEP and our DCP?
Thank you for the question. And for you, Mac, most certainly can. So council can just resolve to adopt the heritage strategy itself. And then those items that were recommended by the Community Heritage Group, council could either decide, one, not to proceed with some and or all of them, and there were recommendations on some. Council could decide, look, we're happy to go through this further, but let's roll this into our upcoming LEP review, which is slated to begin in 26-27 and roll over. So it could form part of that process rather than a separate process. Or council may decide to do a combination thereof to proceed with some of the one of the word less controversial changes, which is normally the delistings and a couple of the other additional items, and then push the other items later for when they review in 2035, when we review the overall strategy again. So there's a few little options as to how far you wanted to, I guess, almost kick down the track some of those items, whether it's just we could do them now, we could do them as part of the LEP review, or you could say do some of them now, but hold some of them off for a little bit further down the track.
And just to follow up, if I may, and will they be some options that can be put forward at our meeting?
Yeah,
is that likely?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, and for you, Mac. And that's part of the purpose of so we'll rewrite the report so there's some more clarity around what those options are, and separate it into those two phases, for a word to describe it in my head, or two products about the strategy versus then the LEP changes as a separate component, and give you some recommendations for those as two separate items in regards to what you wish to do with the strategy, which we'll recommend obviously to adopt now, and then the other options around those items.
Thank you. Clarification.
Just wanted to briefly touch on Noel Jacqueline's submission. In regards to there, one of the main things he was obviously talking around, he didn't support the delisting of Burrows House, but listing the Crown Lands Office. And from that time, we said, we'll acknowledge that the Crown Lands Office and update that component through. And the other bit there was around the Albury Post Office. And as we said all along, we've no issues with what's recommended. It's clear that the Albury Post Office, not just a telegraph room on the first floor, but the components of the post office itself had a role within the Ivor landing and the Ivor incident. But because it is a state listed item, then we do need to go through updating a state listing for updating that, not just a local listing. That requires us to do a far more comprehensive review of that state listing and the elements that compose that state listing. And that will require us to get an actual heritage consultant to be able to write that report with the state government guidelines. And we don't have funding for that at the moment. The issue there is more around the timing. We're all in agreement, we're happy for the work to occur. From our particular end, we've recommended that it's not in our priorities within the next 1 to 4 years, that it's a medium to long-term priority, with consideration to our other priorities, but also council's financial situation. A study would likely be in the vicinity of $30,000 to $50,000 to get that done to the standard that it needs to be. It could be cheaper. We haven't dealt with one for a while. The last one was the consideration of whether to list the IVA plane itself, which came to council recollection about a dozen years ago, 2013, 2014. That was $65,000 at that point in time, but that was a far more comprehensive review from scratch as opposed to review and update. But that would be our rough ballpark. It's not recommended we do it at this stage, but the request from Noel Jacklin is to put it into that 1 to 4 year period. Yep, sorry.
Councillor Glycan, question.
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff, with reference to the IVA and the relationship with the post office and the proposal to put it in the council's report will probably be recommending that we put it in the 1 to 4 year basket. My understanding is that occasionally there are some buckets of funding that come through. And my question is, whilst we would put it in the 1 to 4, and it might need to be closer to the 4 than the 1, what's the likelihood of a bucket of funding being made available, not from Albury City necessarily, but from New South Wales or Heritage Australia or something?
Mr. Christie?
Yep, thank you for the question. And for you, Mem, and just to clarify, Noel Jacklin had requested the 1 to 4. As staff, we were recommending the medium, so being the 5 to 10, sorry, just for clarification.
Okay.
But yes, there are a number of heritage grants that do become available. Council's been reasonably successful with those. For example, undertaking this study when we commenced it in 2021, we got $40,000 from Heritage New South Wales, and $40,000 was kicked in for council to undertake this. We're currently the recipient in the second year of $25,000 from Heritage New South Wales, with $25,000 from council to be able to provide heritage advice to our community and also as part of our assessment process. So there are some. They're a little less, I guess a little rarer when they're about updating individual items as they are when they're around providing broad community support. And they are normally 1-to-1 funding as well. So they are available, and we did say in our response, at the moment it's not recommended due to budgetary constraints. However, if grant funding became available, then we'd look at it. Mr. Jacklin did make a request to us to consider whether he could assist in that funding through a public-private partnership. But as council doesn't own the building, we can't go into public-private partnerships because it's not our asset.
Okay.
So we have explored the opportunities to try to undertake the work quicker.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Councillor King?
Just curious as to what the danger is in delaying for 5 to 10 years. What, in your view, would be a risk in relation to, I guess, Mr. Jacklin's request and his importance to recognise it? What do you think might be something to consider there?
Thank you for the question. And for you, Member, like in danger of the building itself, I don't believe there is. The building already has state as well as local listing, so it's not about the listing itself. It's about the fulsomeness of the story around the listing, which is very relevant. But I don't think it poses a danger to the building itself, because there's already a significant level, and even without the involvement with the IVA, the Albury Post Office itself, with its architectural significance, its social significance, has substantial standing when you consider any heritage alterations to that building. It's more just around the fulsomeness of information around its listing.
Thank you.
Councillor Callaghan?
Thank you. I just have a question in regards to, we're doing our own review, and does the state heritage do their own reviews in time? I know I'm trying to look at it in the reverse. Is there, an opportunity that we can give some information and then they do the study like over time?
Yep.
Mr. Christie?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And for you, Mayor Mack, yes, same for the Commonwealth. But yes, we also had said that if they're undertaking, we're more than willing to be involved. It was just that if it's at our instigation, it's at our cost.
Yeah.
At the moment, if we get any advice at all that they're instigating something, we will definitely become involved and be able to pass on all that information that we've got to be able to assist that.
And sorry, just a quick follow-up. Do we have an indication when they're likely to do their review? And
Thank you for the question. And for you, Mayor Mac, look, if they're a Section 170 register, they're meant to do just a broad review annually, but that's more about on and off, not about updating it. Normally what they would do is, one, if they got any particular funding, or two, they would normally probably review it if they're looking at making major changes to the building and they're wanting to update their heritage understanding of the building to inform any changes through things such as a conservation management plan or the like. That would normally be the instigation of them to do a review of their own bat.
Thanks, Dave.
Councillor Baker.
Thanks, Mayor Mac. A question through to Mr. Christie, I guess. The Hume Dam and the forestry building at the university, obviously they should be listed. Is there any separation that can be included to say that operationally, you know, the object should be heritage listed, but it shouldn't really impact what happens to that building so much? I know you've explained it, but can we do something in a motion that includes, but, you know, divorces it from the operational side when they might want to do things and fix things?
Mr. Christie?
Yep, thank you for the question and for you, Mayor Mac. And as you indicated, Councillor Baker, I did but if they did wish to have some clarity, where that would be, wouldn't be so much in the motion of council, it would be in the statement of significance and the statement of listing. In there, council can make some recommendations. So there are some buildings, for example, where we recognise 1970s additions that are unsympathetic, and we make recommendations like it would be great for you to fix up the fenestration at the back and remove the unsympathetic 1970s addition at the rear. What could be there in the recommendation is that council doesn't wish this listing in any way, shape or form to have an impingement on their right to operate or to undertake maintenance. To be honest, it wouldn't hold any particular weight because when they do their quick review, they'll consider whether they've got any impact or not, but it could be a way in the actual listing itself to make it clear we're not trying to impinge on their operations.
Yeah, just to follow up, if there could be some words along those lines on those two items, that might give some comfort to a few of the councillors.
So, Mr. Christie, the forestry building is on the register, or is it?
Not currently. So
Okay.
again, it
Well,
was
I didn't think
proposed
it was.
to be placed on as part of this process.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Baker? Buttons down. Councillor Gleichen.
Thank you. I've got a follow-up to Councillor Baker's question, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the most relevant member of staff. My question is with reference to the Hume Dam, noting that it needs to be functional, etc. To what end would we place a heritage listing on it? The primary function of that facility is as a dam, and it either functions or it doesn't. And so I've been trying to look at this from a number of different directions, including, you know, the fact that if suddenly the dam was to be found not fully functional or not safe for whatever reason, was deemed that it needed to be demolished and a new dam built, then what happens? And it's not unusual, doesn't happen on a regular basis, but it's not uncommon for a dam to need to be rebuilt. And I know there's been a number of iterations of that dam. I think it's 3 major components for revision, including the thickening of the wall, etc., and the leads to the wall to provide extra buttress strength over many years. But to what end would we want it on the heritage listing? And at what point would we say it needs to be demolished and a new dam built? I mean, how do we weigh those up? I'm not saying I don't want it on the heritage listing. I'm just, because I quite like the dam and it is pretty significant for us culturally, and it's a significant build, and it was a significant part of Australia and its development. So I don't deny any of that. But how would we deal with that?
Thank you for
Mr.
the,
Christie.
yep, thank you for the question and for you, Mayor Mac, and just reiterating that the heritage listing locally would not place any additional burden they're currently got under the Section 170 register. So really, when it talks about development without consent, we talked about earlier, then when they do their review of environmental factors, in essence, they consider what the potential impacts of their development may be. Now, that would be around things like tree removal, around things like hours of operation, around things like heritage. So this wouldn't provide any additional burden they currently have. Again, I can just stress we've got Warringamba Dam, which is the major water supply for Sydney and the Nepean and Hawkesbury rivers. It's also heritage listed. And the heritage listing doesn't preclude demolition where circumstances are appropriate, and the Terminus Hotel in Albury after its fire is probably a classic example of that. And I know it's sad, we all lost a lot of memories, or maybe we didn't have memories, we just knew we were there. But when the Terminus obviously was burnt, had been fire damage to the point where expert reports came in saying that the building cannot be salvaged, and council gave permission for its demolition. It was just the process around that information process. And again, this wouldn't be if the Hume Dam's going to be demolished, they'll need to seek local council approval to do it, because under state policy, it would override any of our heritage listings. It asks that they consider it, and what it would be around the likes is, take some fabric off it, take some pictures, make certain it's recorded and the like. And again, the state listings can be varied, and this is where we'll talk to them. So the Section 170 listings for the Hume Dam at the moment are in 8 sections. So there's the Hume Dam complex itself. There's the couple of cottages, cottage number 1 and cottage number 4 that are retained. There's an interpretive display around the motor and the like. There's the movable heritage items that can be relocated from the dam itself that aren't relied to be within the dam. There's the Nissan huts at the dam. There's the story of the dam itself. And then there's the town plan around the dam that used to go into Helm Street with those dam commission homes and the like. So each of those are asked separately listed as well. So there's components of around how council can have this listing, and our listings would be no more onerous and would have them consistent with those as well, so that there's not any overlap for that component. And obviously it also stop at the high water bank, because that's where it goes into Victoria on the southern side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next steps, obviously, we'll provide a report coming up to council. As I said, we'll separate the components around the heritage review then versus the subsequent recommend changes to our LEP, and provide those separate options for council to either go ahead with one or all of those components. And if they defer some of those, what's the timeline you might want us to undertake the changes? Because noticing, as I said, that there are a number of items that people are supportive of either being on, and some of the individual property owners are supportive of their properties being on and have recommended themselves their properties have been on, such as Dunraven. And then also there's some property owners, 16 of them, who, I suspect would like to have the listing removed, especially because some of them don't have the items on there anymore. So there's just some components around that for consideration to council, but we'll just make certain we flesh out the report a bit more and give you some detail. So I suspect it won't come to you in June, because you've also got a number of substantial consideration of items in front of you for June with the budget coming up. So it will likely come to you in July or August from that end. And then those questions.
I think they've all been asked,
Yep.
Mr. Christie. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Wonderful
councillors.
presentation. Okay. Thank councillors, and thanks, Mr. Christie, again. We have the second presentation, which is the survey for the pool, the Albury Swim Centre, season extension consultation.
Only at 5 minutes. Yes, that's right. Short enough. Good evening, councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to provide some feedback on present the findings of the recent Albury Swim Centre winter season community consultation that we've recently undertaken. Excuse me while I grab it. Okay. Sorry. We'll start off tonight with just a quick recap on the backgrounds of the operation of the Albury Swim Centre. I'll present the findings from the survey that we've got. We'll share with you some of the financial analysis that we've undertaken, focusing on the winter survey. We'll have a look at morning operation versus afternoon operation as one of the options that we'll be exploring. We'll touch on the use of grant funding for the operation of the winter season, and then we'll just outline the options that we've considered. So historically, everyone would be aware that the Albury Swim Centre operated for 7 months a year from mid-September through to mid-April. And in 2022, during the June council meeting, council resolved to explore a trial for the 23 winter season, and the season was extended from April for 10 weeks through till the end of June that year. Later that year, a report was presented to council on the trial findings, and council then resolved to operate the pool throughout winter on reduced hours. And by reduced hours, it opens at 5:30 in the morning till 10:30 in the morning, and then it closes throughout the middle of the day, and then reopens at 3:30 in the afternoon and closes at 6:30 at night. And we've been operating for the past 2 years since that, in that mode. During late 2023, early 2024, we were due to run the tender for the management of Albury-Wodonga Aquatics facilities. And because we already knew that outcome from the previous resolution, we advertised the tender to operate throughout winter on those reduced hours. Earlier this year, Morrison Lowe presented, as part of the financial sustainability project, an opportunity to save $187,000 by closing the pool over winter, which was a recommendation in the report that council considered in March, at the 16th of March council meeting. And council resolved to pursue the objective of keeping the Albury Swim Centre open over winter, but investigate alternate funding opportunities, including but not limited to a winter season surcharge. So as a result of that resolution, we've undertaken this community consultation, which ran from 27th of March through to 26th of August. We engaged in developing that survey. We engaged key stakeholders, including the Albury Aquatics Advisory Committee, and as well as council, in terms of the questions that we asked our community. And it focused on current winter usage, barriers to winter usage, willingness to pay for continued access, as well as some open questions around what the community sentiment was. Pleasingly, and not unexpectedly, it got a lot of feedback, with 867 contributions, and 80% of those people that contributed, as council would expect, are regular users of the pool, and obviously 20% not using the pool. What this slide shows you is that those that do use the pool, they tend to use it, 3/4 of them use it at least a couple of times a week. Of the 20% of the respondents that don't use the pool, the key reasons that they identified for not using the pool included, obviously, not interested in swimming, they prefer indoor facilities, concerns around the water temperature, and some didn't actually know that the pool operated during winter. I mentioned before on the previous slide that a lot of the users are multiple dedicated users, and that's consistent with what we saw in terms of whether they were casual attendants or chose to purchase a aligned leisure membership fee, which offers a discount for regular users. Typically, if you use the pool more than twice a week, it makes more sense to become a member, which is a 2-week membership that is direct debited out of your nominated account. Of those currently using the pool, 67% identified that they'd be prepared to contribute more, an additional fee to support winter operations. Conversely, however, 1/3 of the people said that they would not be willing to pay additional funds to support winter operations. Of those who said that they would be willing to pay more, 35% said that they'd contribute an extra $7 to $10 per casual visit on top of the existing $6.60 per visit. 30% said that they'd pay less than $3 to attend on top of their casual fees. And then for members, 35% said that they'd be willing to pay an additional $10 to $20 per fortnight for their membership, and 21% said, look, an additional $5, up to $5 additional per fortnight. And we'll come into some of the financial analysis in a sec. As you'd expect, in terms of community sentiment, there's very strong views, but also very polarised views. The supporters, obviously, and no one can deny the health and social benefits of operating the pool through winter for those users, as well as for all types of athletes who use the pool during winter. The opponents for operating throughout winter specify financial responsibility and equity for ratepayers, and they're well documented, both those sides of the arguments. And what is in violent agreement is that that Albury lacks adequate year-round indoor aquatic facilities, and I think that's been well documented in the past as well. So looking at our financial analysis, during the last winter season, 2025, we had 11,380 visitors, which attracted $92,000 in revenue. Noting, obviously, there's expenses associated with that. That's revenue, not the net position. And what the analysis was looking at is the willingness to pay more and what impact that would have on our net revenue outcomes, i.e. our financial position. So I mentioned before that the baseline figures, which using 2025 as a baseline, with a casual entry rate of $6.60 per visit, or a fortnightly fee of $24.10 per fortnight. The total revenue last year throughout the winter season was just shy of $92,000. We investigated 3 scenarios, what we called a low surcharge scenario, which is, you can see on the right-hand column there, the first one, 12 to 14% increase to the casual attendance rate, or the membership, the fortnightly membership fee, a medium surcharge, which is 29% increase, and then a high surcharge, which is 55% increase on the base charges. And so this table here outlines some financial analysis based on those 3 scenarios. So you've got the baseline there, where we've got 100% of people using, obviously, that's the current base, so there's no reduction in the retention. And you can see the split between the casual revenue and the member revenue, with a total revenue of $92,000, as I mentioned before. And then if we increase the fee by about 13%, the low surcharge scenario, the retention drops for casuals down to only 67.5%, or for members down to 62%. Remember, I said at the start about a third of users aren't prepared to pay anymore. So you can see the impact that's having on the revenue coming through there. Although you're charging 13% more, when you've got a 30% reduction in patronage, then your total revenue drops to $66,000, or a 28% decline against the baseline. When you increase it up to 29%, the surcharge, an increase of 29%, the retention level drops a little bit more, obviously down to 60% for casuals and down to 55% for members. Interestingly, the total revenue, with the increase in the charge, the reduction in patronage, it comes out to about $66,000 as well. And then similarly for when you charge even more, 50% increase in the surcharge, your patronage drops below 50%, down to 45% of what your baseline patronage is. And similarly, your total revenue drops down below 64%, but it roughly maintains the same revenue despite the increase in the price because of the reduction in the attendance. And I think I've covered off most of those points there already through that description. We also looked at either operating in the morning or operating in the afternoon. So if we close the pool during the afternoon and just operate in the morning. So that's 5:30 through till 10:30. We'd be able to save $45,000 or almost $46,000. If we close it in the morning, obviously it's open for longer hours in the morning, we could save closer to $66,000. Obviously, there's no saving in that you've still got to operate the plant. And so other than outside of labour savings, there's no savings. You've still got to set the pool up, etc. There is a risk that the reduced hours would reduce the attendance, and that would partially, that would then have a partially offset some of the salary savings that you'd make potentially. Not everyone would either be able to cram their time into the morning or into the afternoon. Interestingly, the response to the survey was roughly 50% of people use the pool in the morning and 50% of the people that use the pool use it in the afternoon. You would expect in the afternoon some of those users to transfer into the morning, but we don't know exactly how many.
Councillor Blackman, do you want to ask a question?
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff, it's with reference to the previous slide, but stay on that slide, that's okay. It's Monday to Friday, mornings and afternoons normally at the current program. What was it on? Can you refresh my memory what it was for the weekends? I think at some stage we were.
And Saturday is 7 a.m. till midday is my recollection.
Yeah. So that's Monday and Friday.
That's Monday to Friday, those hours that I mentioned. Sunday definitely closed, and 7 a.m. till midday on a Saturday. Thank you for the question. Now focusing on grant funding, if we could. So there's been a reduction over time from state and federal government around operating grants used for operating purposes, operating fund purposes. Most grants are there for infrastructure, or if they are operating grants, they're established to grow participation or develop new programs, something of that extent. Now, here we are looking at an existing program with an existing service that we're providing, which would make it challenging then to argue to seek a grant should an operating grant should it become available. The other challenge that we've got with grants, the fact that there's not many around at the moment for operating purposes, but obviously at some point all grants are time bound, and so we'd have to face into a decision at some point around financial sustainability, unless our position improves, our financial sustainability improves, which we all obviously are very focused on improving that position with us at the moment. So no questions on grants. So just in summary, the four options that we are investigating, are exploring, continue to operate the Albury Swim Centre on the reduced operation hours. So option one there is the status quo, how we've been operating for the past 2 years. Option two is to consider a winter surcharge. Option three is to either look at morning or afternoon operation, and then option four is to close the pool from 1st of July 2026. Realise the $187,000 in savings as identified by Morrison Low Advisory, and then until such time as council's financial position improves and the service levels can be reviewed in the future. So they're the four options that we're considering. Any further questions from council?
Councillor Blackman.
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff, most memorable, I was about to say, most relevant member of staff. The figures in the report show that it was 691 people use the facility throughout the winter. Was that verified by the providers? Did they concur that that was correct, or?
Our numbers, so we've got daily numbers from the last 2 years of operation through the winter seasons, and it's of that order. It's probably a little bit. We suspect that there was probably some people that said that they use it a bit more than what they do, but it's not. It's not completely out beyond the realms of possibility in terms of their intentions. Yep.
What about so this report deals primarily with Monday to Friday. What are the usages for Saturday? Is that a further option to look at taking away Saturday? I can't imagine it is, because I would think there would be people who couldn't swim during the week but could go on a Saturday. But what's the data on that? Have we got any data on that? Or
Answer for you on hand for tonight, but I can send a note to councillors with what the patronage is like on the Saturday during the 25 winter season versus what it has been during the week. We have got that data. Yeah.
Significant to the savings, and it might preclude school children or children from outside of our area who might come to swim as well. But it was just something I thought might be worth asking. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor King.
Just for clarity and to refresh my memory, that $187,000 in savings, that's purely just in that winter stretch.
If we close the pool from the 1st of July 2026, now it includes the winter of 2026 that the pool would normally be, historically would have been open till. So remember, the pool opens in September. So it's that 10 weeks from the 1st of July through to mid-September. And then in the financial year, it also includes the 10 weeks from mid-April through to end of June. So it's 20 weeks typically where the pool's closed in any year, but 10 of those fall within. Yep, that's right, at the start of the financial year, and 10 of those fall at the end of the financial year.
Okay. Councillor Callahan.
I just had a question in regards to, I know it's not necessarily our facility per se, but it's part of that contractual agreement. Is my understanding that Waves Wodonga also closes that same duration, even though it is a heated pool, but it still closes over that winter period?
And yes, so Waves Wodonga operated historically and still continues to operate a summer season and closes for that 20 weeks of the year effectively. Yeah, from mid-April through to mid-September.
Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Question through you, Mac, to maybe Mr. Glass. Where would if we do close, what would those people that currently use the facility or suggested they might use the facility, what would they do?
Councillor Baker, they would have to revert to what happened a couple of years ago effectively. And majority of those users would either use the Wodonga Sports and Leisure Centre 25-metre pool, I know it gets busy, or the two private pool uses in Albury.
Question,
Yeah.
if I may. So just to get it straight, Albury City has if we shut this, there's nowhere to swim in a council-owned facility. Okay, thanks.
Councillor King.
A little unrelated and question on notice, but is there any visibility? Was Wodonga looking to upgrade their Wodonga Leisure Centre in some capacity at some stage? And do we know what those plans were, or am I?
The original plan.
Thank you for the question, Councillor King. I'm not aware of Wodonga upgrading that facility, and certainly not increasing the capacity of that facility. I'm not aware.
It's actually up for review. I think they're looking at decommissioning it, not upgrading it.
Yes, part of Waves when it built was original was planned for a secondary pool in. That's still the plan, but they've got no money and there's no funding to put that secondary pool in, but it is still part of the plan to add a secondary plan. Yeah, that was the original plan.
Councillor Baker.
Sorry, this is half a statement, but
Is there a question, a half statement, or?
well, it's we've suspended standing or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Things.
You're right.
If you wanted to look outside the square, possibly Wodonga Pool is the outdoor one is more modern and more efficient, and Albury could contribute to keeping that open maybe in a better way than Albury's swimming pool does, because we've got tired infrastructure, tired boilers, and that could work better, but it would need to be a contribution from our side of the river into that to keep that going. And that's just another option if Albury doesn't provide water.
Yeah, Mr. Glass, did you want to speak? You're pressing your button by the looks of it.
Yeah, thank you. Just thank you for the opportunity to comment on that. We have informally tabled it at a staff level. If Albury Council would like to pursue it, we'd appreciate council's assistance in that avenue. And we do recognise it's a more modern pool and it probably would accommodate winter operations better than our facilities.
And 2 extra lights.
Yeah.
Councillor Glacken.
Yes, it's sort of, oh, that's right. Do we know noting the suggestion of Wodonga, do we know the proportion of the 691 people that may have been from Wodonga and or the proportion of the people who really utilise the actual numbers that go through there are from the Wodonga side rather than the Albury side to try and assist with encouraging Wodonga to take this on if it is more indeed cost effective. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the question on notice. We did collect postcode data as part of the survey, so we can provide that information as well.
Councillor King, question?
And it might be a reflection of some of the councillors at the time, but am I right in suggesting that Albury City contributed financially to the cricket academy bricks and mortar infrastructure in Wodonga? So it would not be remiss to suggest that this collaboration has happened before. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Thank you.
$600,000.
Thanks.
Well, I think a bit more than that in the end. Okay, Mr. Glass.
We use aided as well, just along that line of questioning. The fact that we have a joint contract for the 4 facilities, that certainly makes it a little bit easier in this. If it had been separate contracts, this would have been a lot more complicated because we could be dealing with multiple stakeholders.
Yeah, well, I think we're a long way to go with Wodonga on that one.
But in terms of management of the pools.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. No further questions. Thanks. One more question.
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff, happy for this to be taken on notice. Is it possible to ask Wodonga for what the costings would be for them to operate the pool for the same hours for the Wodonga pool, so we could make a comparison with the Albury pool to determine whether or not it would indeed be more cost effective, noting it's all under the one operating company. So it would be the operational side, the physical side of the pool that would be the difference. If we could have that on notice, if that's possible. Thank you.
Mr. Glass.
Thank you for the question. Look, just to manage expectations of councillors here, Wodonga do have a winter pool that they currently support and contribute to and subsidise the operation thereof. There was, when we did table it informally at a staff level, they did flag that they didn't want to be running into this issue in the future, given that they've already got a pool that they fund in throughout winter. By adding another winter pool to it, it's just going to make this their problem from if they ever wanted to close it in the future. That would be a challenge for them. That's part of the reservations.
Councillor Baker.
Question that you might need to take on notice, and also the closure of the Albury pool, what would that cost to businesses and other places around the area that get the clientele that go from swimming to their cafes and things? If you got any numbers on that, that'd be great. But I think there was a strategy that came out that talked about the social value plus the economic value of every swim, rather than the 187 that council may save in one area. But yeah, okay.
Is that the strategy you're referencing?
Yeah.
More than a pool. I thought it was going to be a bestseller. Thanks, Ambrose. Okay. Thank you, councillors. Could I get someone to move us back into ordinary business, please? Thank you, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I'd like to move that we move back into the committee of the, sorry, remove from the committee of the whole back into the committee for the IP&E. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Yeah, happy to second that.
Thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. We have no officer reports for noting. We have no, do we have any, no officers reports for consideration? Do we have any notice of urgent business, councillors? No? Okay, so IPE 13, confidential business. Thank you, councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to move the recommendation that the committee move into confidential to discuss items IP&E 13.1 and IP&E 13.2, as these are confidential items exclusive of press and public on the grounds that the matter relates to information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business. And that's with reference to the Local Government Act 1993, number 30, section 10A2C. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Callahan.
Happy second.
Thank you. And let's ask if there are any statements or submissions from the public regarding the reasons as identified for the confidential item. There is no public here. There are staff. There have been no submissions received. I will put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. The motion to move into confidential has now been carried. Members of the public must leave the chamber, and to our live stream viewers, we now say goodbye. The minutes of this meeting will be published on council's website with